Hey guys, this is Cholera with quite a raucous gang here. This is, for the first time ever, a quadruple commentary. I'm with the entire crowd here, Klazart, Moletrap, and Diggity, and we're going to be watching the last game of Group C of the OSL Round of 16. This is TheZerg versus Midas. Both are 1-1, so whoever wins this will advance, and whoever loses will have to go home and cry, and this is on the map Plasma. I'm going to throw it off right away. I'm going to say I like TheZerg a lot, and I actually like him to win this game. What do you guys think, guys, about who's going to win and who you like better?
I've heard specific people, specifically during the podcast, by the way it's up on SC2GG, we had an even bigger crowd for that TheZerg is supposed to be better than Jaedong and Yellow combined coming up here. That's what people have been throwing out there as TheZerg. He's going to be TheZerg, guys, the Bonjour. So I guess if you're putting that much into it, he should win. But honestly, this is Plasma. Tends to be a little more favorable for Terran players. You've got just because it's odd, it's blocked off, there's more cheese that Terran can do. It almost forces air. I know Cholera's enjoyed it a lot because it kind of forces the lurker build. You've got those lurker eggs, in case you're not familiar with it, out creating blockades. It's almost Monty Hall-ish, and there's also looks like TheZerg is going to get the scout right off. He's starting in purple at the 3 o'clock location. Midas is in the upper left-hand corner. In teal is also the third spawn to the south, which neither player has scouted, of course. Great picture. Midas. Anyway, but yeah, it's honestly I've got to go with Midas here. He's just strong. I don't believe all the Zerg hype, but I do have to admit, if he was the best player, the best Zerg player ever, he would in fact be quote unquote the Zerg.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that he's picked that name. I remember back when Jaedong, when Xavier was in his prime, and I was talking about how Jaedong was lacking certain elements in his gameplay, and lo and behold, next season. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe we're going to be privileged enough to see another Zerg superstar emerging and seeing the Zerg playing, and the Zerg just is going to see that racks that Midas is putting up at the edge of his base. It's an interesting looking. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. I'm not a huge fan of Midas because I find him to be a little bit boring, to be honest, and he's never really done enough for me. So he just doesn't get those juices flowing as far as creative StarCraft enjoyment goes. Nothing more particular than that for all of you dirty-minded folks out there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to a good game of StarCraft either way.
Yeah, I think these two are pretty evenly matched. I guess they're not really superstars yet, but they've been playing pretty well. The Zerg, I gotta say right off, I don't think he's all that in a bag of chips like everyone seems to think he is, despite his little overlord dancing. He used to
Ready
be a
salted or
player.
smoky bacon?
Neither kind of
Great.
chips here. I'm making a bold statement. He has no kind of chips at all whatsoever. He's been beating a couple people lately, but he's going to have to show me a lot more than just a couple wins against decent players before I'm going to start thinking that he's possibly a Bonjour player or anything like that. I think people are just way overrating him. He's been playing pretty well, but not terribly well. On the other hand, Midas has been proving himself. He had a little bit of a dip at the end of the last Pro League season, but in general, he's been playing really, really well in past months, and so I'm going to favor him to win on this one, especially since, as Cholera said, do tend to see Terran's doing a little bit better on this map, I think. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. It looks like TheZerg, he's got a second base down, but he's going for a relatively quick Spire. I'm sorry, Lair, but I'm assuming it's going to go into a Spire, since, as you said, this is an air map, so there's nothing really. You don't have a lot of other options. He could go for some quick lurkers and try and bust down the neutral lurker eggs quickly. But that would be a really character.
I'm sorry, Moletrap. What did you just say? It is the Cholera build, ladies and gentlemen. This is once again the second time TheZerg is doing the Cholera build. And he loves it. He won against Mind in this group using 2-hatch Cholera, and this is straight up. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Cholera build is 12 hatchery into fast gas, fast slayer, Hydrus, and then lurkers, and he's going to win this game, I have to say.
Whoa, Vulture firing from out of the eggs!
Vulture.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. That Vulture crush was ridiculous. Oh, is he gonna... Oh, he gets in. What? Oh my god, this is going to be really bad for him. This is going to be really bad for the Zerg. Oh man, the Cholera build cannot stand up to getting scouted though. That is the one weakness of my namesake. Basically, the goal of this build on this map is to try to break through as soon as possible. Looks like he's actually switched over to Spire now that he's realized he's been scouted. I don't know if this is a good idea. I think if he's going to go for anything, he should stick to it and get those lurkers out. You really need to get those lurkers to break through the eggs, and I did do this once in a game I played against Sonic. It's in my videos, but I love this build, and we're seeing, interesting enough, armory going up. I can't even talk now. An armory going up and a control tower. So maybe once again, Valkyries. This game is going to be absolutely insane. Whatever happens, it's such a low resource game too for TheZerg that he really needs to win in about the next 2 minutes or 3 minutes, or else he's just going to face a long and quick, long and slow decline. Really, I think at best.
I think what might be going through Midas's mind is an Overlord, or I'm sorry, not an Overlord, Overlord hunting, perhaps. It looks like he's going to go for some dropships, in my opinion. He has an engineering bay alongside. He might be getting turrets up to deal with... actually, I have no clue, because he's got all that tech out. There's a lot of options. He's getting the turrets up with that engineering bay. You could easily switch over to Medic Marine post this, but yeah, he very possibly could be going for those Valkyries just to make sure that he doesn't lose an air advantage. This is the first map I've ever seen consistent Valkyries on in a long time. In the meantime, upgrading something at the machine shop.
There's the Valkyrie.
There's Valkyrie right there. Yeah, seriously. This is just absolutely insane. I do have to say, one thing that got kind of mentioned over, and there's a Goliath as well. That was what I was expecting to see alongside. But, so extremely anti-air here. One thing that was clever, though, was this Midas. He planted that barracks right on the corner, went for the Overlord, and actually, in the process of doing that, because he built it at that position, taking calculated risks that he was going to face an Overlord from that direction, he managed to deny the Zerg basically scouting information quite early on, and so and he's continued to some degree. Although I think that Valkyrie, as well as it's all been revealed because of that Scourge. But I just wanted to point that out, something at least interesting. I have no idea how he did that Vulture maneuver, and now he's switching into a 3 hatchery build. And Midas in a pretty good position. He's got 2 bases up. That's all that he really needs to win this map down. It's not a very large economic map, and he's just sacrificing his barracks out here, though, just using it purely for scouting. So I've got to assume he isn't planning on switching to Medic Marine. He's just going to go pure mech, because he's just floating that out there, doesn't care whether it lives or dies. My assumption is he's just going to put down 2 more factories really quick, and then try to take the game from there.
Especially after his initial strategy was discovered. We've seen some pretty cool plays in this game, though, from both players, with the Cholera build being employed, and the Vulture managed to sneak out through those eggs and get the scout off. But Midas definitely looks like game of StarCraft, and it'll be interesting to see how the Zerg player responds to Midas's choice of strategy. Midas seems to be doing everything at once. He built the engineering bay, he built the starport with the control tower, he built the armory, and I'm not sure if that was necessarily wise. Yes, it gave him options, but maybe it was a little bit too much too soon, because he did set himself a little bit. Now he's got a couple of Valkyries out. Maybe he's hoping that once he can build up a decent-sized force of Valkyries, the air power in the game, and then be in a position to just dominate his opponent. He has got those 4 factories down as well, so he's gonna be pretty much able to do pretty much anything depending on what his opponent is doing. It's just a question of whether the Zerg can still somehow catch him off guard a little bit with a sizable force of one type or another that Midas isn't exactly prepared for. But Midas now with a couple of Sea Shanks, Goliath wandering out as well, Scourge is trying to get the scout in. Lurkers burrowed, and the only thing I think the Zerg can hope for is that maybe Midas walks over some burrowed Lurkers without scouting them and gets killed. Otherwise, he's going to have a tough time defending against this.
Right, that seems to be his plan here, and you can see the Zerg running his Overlords, trying to get them out of the way so they won't be in part of this battle here. Now, it does look like Midas's force might be heading down towards those Lurkers there. I think both of these players probably watched the game of Mind versus Luxury, the game just previous in this group, and because we saw something very similar except Mind ended up going for the bio underneath the Valkyries and the Wraiths and that sort of thing. I think seeing that early Vulture may have hinted that there was an early factory, which would hint at an early starport, so that's why we saw him get that Spire, I think, was in anticipation of some air units coming. Maybe he expected Wraiths or something like that. But both players now expanding a little bit here. It looks like, Midas up to 3 bases here, and the Zerg is up to 4 bases, or he's getting his 4th right now, and he's building up a significant amount of air forces. It looks like the Zerg is not content to just let Midas take the air with and I don't think he's going to be able to do a lot of good with these Mulisks, and he maybe if there was more air units, but most of Midas's units are actually mech, and I don't think this is going to go up very well against those Goliaths. The only thing is that, I'm really not sure this army is going to be very much of a match for Midas's army here once he finally starts pushing in. There's a lot of tanks. They're going to be able to easily deal with Hydralisks and Lurkers. It's just going to be a kind of a trade-off thing. Who can engage which of each other's forces with their counter forces, if that makes sense. In other words, trying to engage the tanks with the Mutalisks, or on the other hand, trying to engage the Mutalisks with the Valkyries, etc.
Yeah, it's going to be a big standoff in the center of the map here. It looks like the Midas is actually broken through in the middle, and he's going to deny this new expansion from the Zerg once and for all now. He was trying to do that with his Vultures, but there's no way. Oh, and those Mutalisks. There's no way those Mutalisks are going to stop it. And I think a couple of Mutalisks got caught up there in those gunboat crazy mass missiles that those Valkyries have. Now we're seeing those Lurkers moving forward. I am very disappointed at the Zerg. He sort of dithered once he saw the scouting come in. I guess he realized that he was scouted, but I still think he could have gone for that Lurker rush. I don't know why he decided to build a Spire so early. Perhaps what he was afraid of was a 2-port Wraith rush. I think that's the reason why he's like he decided I have to get that Spire up. But on the other hand, if you have Hydralisks up already, you can deal with Spire units. And deal with Wraiths. And if you have that many Lurkers, it doesn't matter if they have Wraiths. You're going to power your way into their base and take them down before they can really do that much damage to you with their Wraiths. But in any case, though, we're seeing that, interesting enough, the Zerg is actually trying to break through at the same place that Midas is trying to break through, but Midas is going to definitely squash that one Lurker there. Poor Lurker. A bunch of Valkyries there, and the Zerg's attempt to expand there at the lower left failing. So I'm going to have to say that the Zerg really didn't employ the Cholera build, because if he did, he wouldn't have built that Spire, and he would be winning the game right now. Instead, he chickened out of the Cholera build, which requires immense courage to do. Even when you're scouted, you just have to go for the Lurkers, man. I mean, come on. No kidding, the reason why I do this build is because I actually think it allows a lesser Zerg player to surprise and kill a Terran player who's better than them, and that's why I use it, because pretty much everyone's better than me. But interesting enough, a lot of hatcheries up for the Zerg, so maybe he's hoping to get that Hive Tech and get lots of Lings out. Otherwise, I don't see the reason why he has something like 6 hatcheries off of his main bases so early.
Whew, a lot of Zerglings getting popped right there, running up in I think what he's doing here is he's still going with the Mutalisks, because the one thing that Midas does not have in his advantage is mobility. His forces are very, very slow. The Goliaths are not great, especially going through these small little territories. The Vultures kind of are, but they're having a degree of difficulty. Oh man, beautiful Zergling lead there. I love seeing stuff like that. But his forces are very slow. Valkyries are extremely slow in the air, and just mobility is a big problem for him. So he upgraded level 1 weapons on the Mutalisks, and has just been using them to just pick off forces here and there. And in the meantime, Midas hasn't been able to bring them around to really engage. And it looks like he's actually going to push up and try to stop production, but there's all sorts of tanks in the way. Now Mutalisks going for the backside, and once again, this is what I'm talking about. I don't know that it's going to be a while before Midas can engage, and engage here, but again, actually lure them right into Scourge. Nice, actually. That was some good planning there on the Zerg's part, but that's the weakness in Midas's army here. The question is can the Zerg exploit it? Exploit just the pure lack of mobility that Midas's army is suffering of right now.
Yeah, Midas, the Zerg is actually fighting some interesting running battles. He's doing a good job of switching the focus of the fighting from north to south to north to south, and basically dividing Midas's forces through that. And he's actually managed to just about get that expansion up at the bottom left-hand corner of the map through doing that. And now he's bringing in the Mutalisks again to try and focus in on those siege tanks. I think, unfortunately for Midas, he's only got 2 Valkyries. He doesn't have too many Goliaths down there either, because most of Midas's forces are at the southern edge of the map. So by the time those Valkyries arrive, meanwhile, the Zerg has taken out about 3 or 4 siege tanks. He killed a significant number of siege tanks. He's brought some Scourges in to shield those Mutalisks as well, to prevent them from taking too much damage. He's actually managed to get some Lurkers, some Hydralisks in within Midas' sphere of influence, but unfortunately for the Zerg, he's actually lost now that expansion at the 7 o'clock position, and Midas has now reasserted his control over the map. But the Zerg, by no means out of it. He's fighting a tough battle, but he's not out of it yet, and he's clearly seems to be slowly but surely taking air superiority in this game simply by moving his units around, because even though Midas has got Goliaths to support those Valkyries, the problem for Midas is that those Goliaths are not able to keep up with the Valkyries. So the Zerg can basically just keep Midas off balance by moving his Mutalisk from one point of attack to the other, and because Midas has expanded and is spread fairly around the map, he's able to do that, especially since he had an expansion down at the south. It looks like he's going to go for another Mutalisk raid at Midas's expo just south of his main, and now trying to break through the center of the map as well. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do that. There is one Siege X arriving, bunch of bunch of Overlords coming in to absorb damage from the Valkyries. He's going to lose all the Overlords, but he's broken through the center. The Zerg has effected a big break here, and he might just be able to run havoc behind Midas's lines here.
Yeah, that was actually a big move. I was about to say that it seemed like Midas was the only one that was doing damage, even though it looked like the Zerg had a little bit more mobility. He was doing a lot better job of moving around with his Mutalisks and what have you. He really wasn't accomplishing a lot of damage. He killed off a couple tanks, but Midas was actually going on, and with his harassment, Midas was actually killing off expansions and lots of drones and that sort of thing. So countering that and taking out expansions is really important for the Zerg right now, since after losing that expansion, I think he's down to, it looks like, 4 bases at this point, which before taking out that base was even with Midas. Losing a Mutalisk, some of the other Mutalisks down to very, very low health there. This is crazy. This is basically what StarCraft is about, is having different kinds of units and trying to counter one kind of unit with the kind of unit that is better against it, and switching back and forth, trying to deal with what what the other player has heavy in their army, what they have light in their army, that sort of thing. Absolutely crazy game. Huge battle coming in here in the middle. It looks like the Zerg trying to break through, but I think there's too many tanks for a ground army to really make a lot of progress unless he had a lot more forces, which he doesn't. Yeah, so just major battles going on back and forth in the middle here. It's really hard, for me at least. Maybe, Cholera, you have a better idea. Who exactly is winning this game right now?
I would say Midas is actually winning, unfortunately. The Zerg is stuck for a while to Hydralisk now, and Hydras are actually quite powerful if the Terran doesn't have a very high number of siege tanks. If they had just Goliaths and Vultures, Hydras are very powerful, but by the late game, you really need to switch back to a more orthodox build, either a Zergling Lurker Defiler or Zergling Ultra or some form like that. Hydralisks in large clumps like that just don't cut it though against mass tanks, which is what Midas already has. He has those mass tanks everywhere, and it looks like the air force of the Zergs has already been cut down. I think the Zerg is actually only at his 3 starting bases, so despite his very heroic efforts, I think he's going to fall behind because Midas has actually got more bases than the Zerg does. I just don't know. I think the Zerg has one big battle left for him. I don't know what kind of tech he has actually. I'm not even sure if he has a hive up yet, to be honest, but one thing that will be in his advantage is that Midas will not have much gas at all for science vessels, so I haven't seen a single science vessel yet. He's been using them, of course, for all those Goliaths and tanks that you can see there, so he's not going to be able to really go for a lot of science vessels, if any at all. And maybe in the late game, when the Zerg switches back into Defilers, or switches into Defilers rather, and yeah, still on Lair. Wow, if you only get some Defilers and some Plague out, that would be able to help him immensely against Midas, but he's just been forced to constantly attack and constantly be on the defensive. He hasn't had a chance to tech up, so I think that'll be his downfall though.
Yeah, I think what the game plan for the Zerg thus far is simply you have the, as Moletrap was saying, is it's a lot about unit selection on unit selection. He's been exploiting that up to this point, basically pulling units out of position, specifically the Goliaths, through troop movements or establishing territory, and then turning around, bringing the mules to attack the tanks while they're vulnerable. Unfortunately for him, that only works for so long. That works, and as you can see, engaging right now, he's just running into troops. That only works when there's only a limited amount of Valkyries and a limited amount of Goliaths on the ground, and you've got to exploit that to the full advantage and win the game in that stage, and I think it's gone beyond that now. Midas has enough troops that he can cover basically all the territory, and he's just sealing the Zerg out. He's just going to pin him into the 3 bases he has and just starve him out at this stage. Looks like 3 Mutalisk expansions to sneak through there, but honestly it's just not going to get a lot done at that stage, and as you can see, the Zerg trying to expand but losing expansion here. Midas has this game at this stage, in my opinion. I think it's just inevitable. It's a matter of time, and I don't think that there's anything the Zerg can do. And yeah, you're talking about the mules, or Hydralisks, I should say, very harsh on this map because they're going through very close quarters, and Splash just has the absolute maximum potential effect as those Hydralisks are going through these lurker corridors, these lurker egg corridors, you can say, right here. And as if tank, see, look how closely they're clumped right there. And this is just tanks. This is just exactly what a tank commander wants to see.
Yeah,
Oh,
unfortunately for
wow.
the Zerg, Midas's vice-like grip continues to tighten on this game, and it doesn't look like there's much the Zerg can do at all. He fought a long war of attrition with Midas, and unfortunately he just didn't deal enough damage. He didn't really erode enough of Midas's forces or resources or anything while remaining at lair himself for a long period of time. And I think you've got to give a lot of credit to Midas. He coped fairly well with all of the Zerg's tactics, accounted for them, absorbed the blows, continued to build up his strength up to the point where he could negate his opponent's maneuvers, and is now in a position to close out the game. So very professional performance from Midas in this game, at least versus the Zerg, and it doesn't look like there's much more the Zerg can do.
Yeah, I'm going back to, I don't remember who said it exactly, but I think a couple of you mentioned Swarm, Defilers, Plague. I don't know why the Zerg never really bothered to get those. Those are, I mean, this is the perfect counter to Terran Mech. It's the perfect counter, and the Zerg has not gone for it. And yeah, this is definitely firmly in Midas's hands now. You could even see almost in a literal sense from the minimap, the teal forces literally kind of coming in and closing in on the purple parts of the minimap there. It looks like the Zerg has managed to mount a little decent force and hold off this attack, so he's held off his death for a little bit longer. Without Defilers in sight, I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, I'm just surprised the Zerg has chosen to go for this. I would almost call it Sauron Zerg, but Sauron Zerg is only applicable against Protoss. He's definitely, maybe he thought he was fighting Stork or something, because yeah, you don't go for this many Hydralisks. I've gone from amazement to surprise, and now to just a little bit disappointment against the Zerg, and GG coming from the Zerg. So perhaps he wasn't all that in the bag of chips, as Moletrap said. At least he'll have, well, he'll be back to the 2v2 team perhaps, or maybe they'll promote him to the 1v1 team on NBC, who knows, for his decent performance. I still think he would have won if he had gone 2 hatch lurkers, but that's just my opinion. But Midas will advance along with mine, so unfortunately the 2 Zergs get eliminated and the 2 Tyrants move on.
Yeah, it's somewhat disappointing. I like seeing a lot more Zerg later in the OSL just because that's my favorite matchup. But the one thing I think we're missing though is there's not a lot of gas on Plasma. I don't think he could start off with that build. It's just, I don't know how you can tech to Defiler period without establishing a third gas, and he really couldn't establish a third gas while Midas's troops were on the roam there. So he just didn't have, there just wasn't, Plasma's just such a small map, there's so few resources. I don't know how he could have tech to Defiler and really sustained it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think, are we going to cry Monty Hall again on this map? I don't know. We'll have to see a few more games and a few more statistics before we can make up our minds.
Yeah, that is a good point. I hadn't thought about the kind of general lack of gas, just because there's so few bases on the map in general, so something to think about.
Yeah,
but each of them were, I guess, I don't remember. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I like this map, even though I am a Zerg player, and this is a definitely Terran biased map. I do think that it still adds to, even though it is Terran biased and pretty much Terran versus Protoss and Terran versus Zerg, I think it makes creative builds, and it makes for interesting games. Even if the Terrans win all of them, I'm still sort of happy I am happy to see this map in the map pool. It's more interesting, I think, than Monty Hall is, at least, from my point of view.
I think if they just added 1 gas to if they had 3 gas without having to break the lurker eggs, I would be a lot happier with it. I think then it would be a little, then it really would be kind of even across the board with Zerg. That would get kind of nuts because you'd have really fast techs essentially behind walls, and that could make some very interesting late game as well. But yeah, this is, I don't know. I do have to admit, this has created some very, very interesting games that have been very, very fun to watch. And I think it's been more successful in that than, well, actually, no, Troy made some very entertaining games, especially with Best. But it's been more successful, definitely, than Monty Hall Persona. And I can't even remember, what was the quote-unquote creative map prior to that? Rush Hour can't really be considered that.
I don't know. I think that's something they've been concentrating on more. They've been making more and more and more creative maps lately, possibly in an effort to boost ratings or something like that. Seems like they've been trying to outdo themselves by coming up with new things every season.
Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed. This is the first time we've done a quadruple commentary, but we're going to be moving on to the next game, and thanks for watching.